Shalom, friends. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our weekly news update. And I'm just getting set up here, so give me just 1 second, and we'll be putting some news items on our screen. So just getting that all set up. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you can hear me okay. And if you wouldn't mind giving me a 5x5, that's always appreciated. Thank you so much, Saints, for joining us tonight. Some of the stories that we're going to be covering are, well, they're difficult. Not all the stories that we're going to be covering are good news and fun news. Some of it is difficult news to get through, but we're going to have to get through some of this tonight. And so I just wanted to, each week, what we're going to be doing is a bit of a review of the things that are going on around the world from a biblical perspective. And many of us are seeing the effects of of the fall, if you will, of those that have forgotten who runs this entire creation. And we're going to continue to see the effect of the king's increasing presence in the world systems. And this is why we want to take the time to do a review. This is why we want to take the time to look at some of these stories, understand them not just from a fact basis. There's plenty of channels that you can go to that will give you the facts as best they understand them, and even give you their commentary. And what we're looking at these stories for, and the reason why we're doing this each week, and we will be doing it this time each week. I hope this is a good time for all of you. We're going to be going over these stories so that we can make sure that we're not putting our heads in the sand with what's going on around our world. One of the challenges that I continue to see, one of the things that we do here consistently is we do review the news. We review things that are happening, and we talk about what Elohim is doing, what we see happening, and as he is moving. That's very important, because if you only listen to the news, if you only listen to what's going on but don't have a context, it can be overwhelming. In fact, my experience with many of you has been that when I've asked, hey, have you heard about this, or did you know that this just happened? Most of the time I hear, I checked out of the news. I don't listen to any of that. I don't care about any of that. I don't want to listen to any of those people. And I understand, because honestly, neither do I. Much of what is presented as news is really propaganda with the intention of moving the needle in a direction. It is not necessarily to inform you or to help you make better decisions. Most of what you're getting fed in what is called news media and even news commentary, which has become the common thing that is done, is primarily for the purpose of persuasion more than it is informing. And so what we want to do is we want to share the things that we're coming across each week. I see things every single week. I could do 5 hours just on the last 3 weeks, but I don't want to do that. I'm just going to do this starting here. Going forward, we're going to keep an eye on various factors going on around the earth. And I pray that it's edifying for you. I pray that it encourages you and strengthens you in the way that that this information is presented, and hopefully it will help us to think better and reason better about what our choices are, because you need to make effective choices in this hour, and that is only going to happen because you're paying not only attention to the voice of Elohim, because you have to listen to his voice, but you have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to be aware of the circumstances. I recently heard a story about John the Apostle, and he was asked to return to the Emperor of Rome to answer the Emperor of Rome concerning some things that he had prophesied. And he needed to know a little bit about the political landscape. He needed to have an understanding of what he was walking into. And so he was quite aware. In fact, we are all quite aware. All of us that are called into this thing called the work of the ministry are quite aware of our circumstances and our surroundings. And so the counsel and encouragement that we're going to give you is to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. And with that, we're going to get into the news. The first one I want to point out to you, I'm going to put it right up on the screen for you. And when I do that, I'm going to go turn this fan off because it's really loud. So hang on just one second. Oh, that's better. Now I can hear myself think. Again, thank you for your patience. Fed Bank. Central banks are continuing to dump coupon treasuries. You may want to take a look at this. Again, all these links will be in the description. Thank you again for your patience as we get this format down. This is a big deal. If you're not watching this space, you won't know what hits you when it hits you. Central banks, both the Fed and the foreign banks, have morphed. And so they're doing a lot of things out there that are in preparation for, well, your financial future if you're sticking to that system. So this is going to become a very dangerous time. What they're suggesting, of course, is by this action is that their confidence in these treasuries is low. And these are professional investors. These are people that are paid to manage large funds. And so when foreign central banks and other entities, and it's not just the central banks, are dumping treasuries, that's something you should be aware of. So we thought you should know that that is happening, as that is going to affect the value of your dollar internationally. At the end of September, the Japanese have sold, as of the end of September, the Japanese have sold 114 billion in coupon treasuries, which is their biggest monthly treasury drop on record. So they are dumping U.S. treasuries, and that is something that I hope we all will, not be impacted by directly, but I do believe it's going to affect the greater market. I think you're going to start to see a lot more volatility and some serious danger that is on the horizon. And that's manifesting in a different way. And that second story that I'm going to share with you, and again, I'm going to go quickly, I'm not going to try to take up too much of your guys' time, but I wanted to alert you to some things that are happening in our world. The second one I want to point out is, and this is directly connected to it, your freight demand has not found its floor. So maritime, rail, and trucking demand still falling into historic lows, slow months, and it is not picking back up. So the last we all heard about shipping containers in Los Angeles, the last most of us knew about this, we were hearing that they were backed up for months and there was all this stuff there. Not anymore. It is literally, they just went through a very slow period, and it continues to be slow because, again, the dollar is being sent home. So much more difficult to conduct international trade when the US dollar no longer commands the respect that it once commanded, again, indicating the difficulty that we're walking into. The next thing I wanted to point out, and this is part of that same theater, is, I'm sorry, that got out of position. Forgive me there. The LA port head says October was the quietest month since 2009. And this is indicating to all of us, if you're paying attention, just how serious some of these economic challenges are. So if the bank if they can't operate in credit, I read a report that that they were trying to get Japan to participate with the United States to fund some things, and Japan basically sent them packing. So that is another factor that we're all paying attention to is, will the old guard continue, or is the world in a process of changing? And I believe that it is in the process of changing. So this is good news for us in many ways. It shows the effect of the king in terms of calling into account those things that have been done in fraud. And so this is what you're starting to see. These are the side effects of these calling to account that is starting to happen in a greater and greater way. And those things which were hidden in the dark are no longer operating the same way. So you're going to continue to see disturbance in your world. I did pop up a story here too soon, but let's go ahead and grab it now. The North Koreans did call the foreign minister or the UN chief a puppet of the US after he launched an ICBM. That's an intercontinental ballistic missile. That's what that is. An intercontinental ballistic missile is a missile that can travel to the United States. So this is not a small statement, and basically what the North Korean foreign minister called the UN chief. He went on to say the UN Secretary General connived at the fact that the U.S. and its vassal forces were referring the DPRK's exercise of its inviolable sovereignty to the UN Security Council to put pressure on it. This clearly proves that he is a puppet of the U.S., he said, or she said rather. I often take the UN Secretary General for a member of the U.S. White House or its State Department. So United Nations is not exactly making a very big impression in North Korea and not likely to negotiate any positive things there. So again, another reason why we need a change of leadership worldwide, because otherwise this thing's going to pop. And so we're seeing, more and more, what do you want to call it? Conflagrations and saber rattling going on worldwide. And that is exactly what we were told to look for. The scripture tells us that there will be wars and rumors of wars. And so we shouldn't be too excited, bothered by that. And he said, do not be troubled. These are just the beginning of sorrows. And so we shouldn't get ourselves too over our skis, but it is important that we understand that that saber rattling is happening. Okay. And this all ties together to the things that are going on worldwide. The House committee there's a House committee launching an investigation. I'm going to go ahead and find that story here in a moment. So give me a second there, guys. But I thought this was really interesting. I don't know if you guys are watching this FTX debacle or not, but it feels like a setup. Let me see if I can get the story up on my screen real quick. But the U.S. House of Representatives, I believe, is opening an investigation, which, again, like I said, it feels like a setup. Because by opening the investigation, they're sort of breaching this conversation into cryptocurrency. And let me get this on the screen. And this is a real challenge for going forward because, again, they're trying to head you off at the pass. What they're not telling you is they're trying to get you to buy into their system. And here it is. Yeah, there it is. I'll put it up on the screen here for you. And these are very serious things here. This one's going to morph. And I wanted to share this with you because some of this you can't make up. So take a look at this. The House Committee launches investigation into FTX. So this is tying to both national and international trade. And hang on just a second, let me remove this. There we go. Anybody else noticing that this man's name is Sam Bankman-Fried? I didn't think that was coincidental. One of the things that I've noticed about our enemy and our adversary, he loves to mock. And so mockery is very high on their priority list for reasons that I cannot understand. But I thought this was very interesting that this person's name, is his best friend Ben Dover or something? You know what I mean? So some of these names you have to look at and go, okay, are you guys serious? Is this for real? And of course, they are for real. So they're not kidding. That's really his name. And so lawmakers Thursday announced a bipartisan hearing will be held next month to question company leaders about the collapse is estimated to have cost U.S. customers billions of dollars. So they raided this cryptocurrency. The more we dig into this, the more we're finding out that it was basically set up just to crash it so that they could then go and say, oh, look at what you guys did. Oh, we're going to have to regulate this. Anybody else see that? All right, so it looks to me like that's what they're trying to sell to the American people. That and simultaneously desperately trying, and I mean desperately trying, to destroy the cryptocurrency market before the release of the uh, digital currency from the Federal Reserve. So they're desperate to try to stay alive, and unfortunately, they don't have a good prophetic future. Let's just put it like that. Okay, so having failed in many of their attempts to go raise funds in other places, the latest nonsense that they tried to pull and now are asking Africa, this is all trying to fund their failing system. This is what they're desperately trying to figure out how to fix this mess, because fiat currency always collapses. So usually they have a war or some other mechanism of destruction so that they can cover up what they're doing and get away with it. And in reality, and generally that has worked. I mean, it worked in World War I, it worked in World War II, but they couldn't quite pull it off. We're in a different type of warfare. We're in an information war. And honestly, this is not a good day to be a liar. This is not a good day to be part of the dark side, if you will. They are losing, and they will continue to lose because the momentum has shifted. The brightness of the king's coming has been has been destroying things. And so, according to the World Economic Forum, the continent needs to pay $2.8 trillion to meet its obligations under the Paris Agreement. And African nations basically told them to pound sand. So that's not going to be happening, but it doesn't mean they didn't try, right? So they're still what this is, what the reason why I want to point it out to you is not because, we're necessarily concerned about that, but watch this trend. See these things as you put them together, you go, what's going on here? Having a little trouble keeping things rolling, guys? Having a little trouble financing things? You guys sure personally did well, but many of these players, they're doing fabulous personally, but their systems, I mean, I think they overrobbed their own they overrobbed their own scams to the point where they got rich, but now the systems are failing. So there's that, right? And that is a big deal. So I just wanted to point that out to you, some of the trends that are changing. We're going to be watching that week to week. So I want to set that tone right now that we're going to be paying attention to some of their machinations. I don't think it's accidental that the guy's named Sam Bankfried. I know it's Bankfried, but it's spelled Bankfried. And again, I look for mockery. I look for those things. I look for where the devil gives off his tells. And he has to indicate what he's going to do. There's got to be the dark side has to tell you things. And so if you pay attention, the evil will tell you about itself. If you pay attention, it just will. So there's that. Here in the state of Arizona, moving into a different piece of news, we have continuing saga regarding the midterm elections. How many of you were paying attention to the midterm elections and saw Arizona and thought for sure, we'd have a new governor, Kerry Lake, and, there would be no question about it. In fact, the exit polling was 80% Republican and less than 20% Democrat. I know it was like 17% Democrat were on the exit polls. So the possibility that person won is very unlikely. And so election fraud, the attorney general, and here, let me put this on the screen. This was interesting. And again, stuff that you may not have known about if somebody didn't show it to you. So that's why I'm taking the time to put this in front of you so that you're aware of it. This is some of the things you may not have known occurred. This is Mr. Mark Brnovich. He's the Attorney General of Arizona. And they have put out this letter that they sent to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office to require, basically to demand that they explain, and they say here in this second letter that the things they want: voting locations that have problems with printers, specific problems at each location, and any other issues related to the printers, and tabulators and comprehensive log of all changes, precise time. This sounds like a lawsuit that's prepping. This is a prep for a lawsuit. If you don't give it to us this way, we're going to come get it a different way. So this is far from over in Arizona. It looks to me like this is about to go to the courts, which we didn't see a lot of help from in the previous effort regarding this issue of election clarity and election credibility. So it is good, regardless of the winner, it is good to see that they are taking it very seriously and that they intend to continue investigating until there is a clear they clear the air of any thoughts concerning legitimacy. And so this letter was a 3-page letter, and it's asking for those things to be done according to statute. This is required. And so, of course, he states the statute, Arizona law here. That now Maricopa County has been known, folks, to absolutely blow off the Attorney General. So this saga may continue with great interest for all of us to pay attention to. So this ought to be an interesting setup, if you will. I thought this was fascinating. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this. I don't think I can play it in a way that you can hear it, but I'm going to leave the links to every story that we share. I have them all here on my list, and as soon as I'm done with the broadcast, I will go back to the description of the broadcast and put all the links for every story that I'm sharing with you in there. So I'm just going to copy this and put it right in the description so you guys can look at those and review for yourself. Again, fact check everything, right? And if you find something that turned out to be an error, please let us know so we can update the next weekly update. We can let people know, oh, that last story, that wasn't right. Okay. This was really interesting. Senator Josh Hawley. And again, what does this indicate to us? This indicates a level of light that is increasing. All right. So this is not about politics. This is about light. And this kind of thing, I'm going to be 59 years old here in just a couple of months. I've never seen this kind of thing going on. And in 2 minutes, he absolutely decimated the FBI director. Frankly, told him he had no business in the job. So it was a very, very strong confrontation. And I believe those confrontations will only increase as now that we're past the midterm elections, as I suspected, there were many things that were being held up in not wanting to disturb the election cycle. But now that that's over, you're going to see a lot more people or a lot more things that are going to now sort of hit the fan. So hang on, everybody. White knuckle. Okay, white knuckle. Speaking of elections, Brazil knows what they're doing. And I'm going to show you how it's done. Okay, speaking of elections, this is big, huge news. This is how it's done. Okay, over 3 million Brazilians protest the election fraud that occurred there. And again, we're not saying there is any election fraud here. We're just saying it. If there's suspicion, you should review. If you won, you won. You shouldn't worry about it. But if you didn't, you cheated. You should be very worried. They had over 3 million people, and they continue to go into the streets to the point where, look at this, he annulled it. So they're going to annul the steal. This was as of November 16th. So I don't know if there's an update to that story that changes that outcome, but if you take a look at this, guys. Look at the number of people that we're talking about in the streets. Look at this. That is amazing. That is amazing. And America, that's how you take your country back. You can't sit around waiting for them to decide to be good. They're just not going to. You're going to have to raise your voice, and righteousness will have to return. So this is a good sign, I think, for those that are believing, for the truth to come out everywhere, regardless of who won what. Who cares who won? But just tell the truth. Who cares who did what? But tell the truth. So I'm very happy to see that. I think it is a very big sign um, in the earth that is hard to ignore. And regardless of their attempts to try to suppress this story, it's getting out. And it's starting to inspire others to ask questions, hard questions. So that was exciting to see. And I'm very grateful. I am really grateful to see people sort of pushing back and not accepting what they know to be incorrect. If they know it's, if you know that something is completely wrong, you got no choice to stand up. You really do. You've got to be willing to put yourself to the hazard, if you will, sometimes to stand up for what is right. So I'm very proud of the Brazilians. I think they have done an amazing thing there, and I believe it can be very inspiring to the rest of us. How many of you know that there was a lawsuit filed at the Supreme Court? This my friend Octavia might find very interesting. So we note that there's a lawsuit filed with the Supreme Court. Here, I'm going to put it in front of you here so you can see it for yourself. Again, I'm going to give you the PDF so you can review this filing for yourself, which was received by the clerk of court at the Supreme Court. Here, let me put this on the screen. Hang on. There you go. So this is the actual filing. Supreme Court of the U.S. filed on October 20th. I didn't know this. I just found this out, so I'm sharing it with you guys. This is a petition for a writ of certiorari. What does all this mean? It's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo, but the people that are named are over 388 members of Congress, the Senate, and the Biden administration, all of them being charged with treason. So we will watch this with great interest. How many want to know how that works out, right? You think that's going to be on the evening news? Do you really think that you're going to hear on the evening news that they're charging the current government, 388 members of the current government, with treason? So again, I expected this sooner. So when I made a post on Facebook about them waiting until after the election, some of you saw me state that. I said they were going to wait till after the election. You didn't know what I was talking about. I was talking about some of these things. They're waiting for after the election so that they can kind of spring their traps. And we'll see if that works. We'll see if that was a good move or not. We'll see if that was wise by the results, right? We judge a tree how? By its fruit. So we'll watch that with great interest. But yeah, 388 people were named in that suit, and that was filed with the Supreme Court. So I know I didn't hear that in regular news coverage, and I certainly wasn't aware of it. And I doubt very seriously any of you would have been aware of it because it's a very uncommon thing to do. Many of you may not have known this. I don't know if you do or don't, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. Did you know that the governor of Texas, now that the election is over, okay, so again, election is over, and now you're going to see some different types of behavior. And he says he invoked the invasion clauses of the U.S. and Texas Constitution to fully authorize Texas to take unprecedented measures to defend our state against an invasion. I'm using the constitutional authority and other authorization and executive orders to keep our state and country safe. So he's going to deploy the National Guard to safeguard the borders, to repel what he calls an attack. I think there's a lot of Americans that might agree with that. So depends on, of course, who's coming across and why and where. So I do believe that there needs to be some serious upgrade to that process here. And I think most of us agree that this is an area that needs some serious attention. So now you understand why there's a battle in Arizona. Why would there be a battle in Arizona going on? Because they knew they lost Texas, okay? They knew, those who want to keep this floodgate open knew that Texas was done and this was probably going to happen. So now you understand why there's such a battle going on for Arizona. Okay, so that is why we need to pray, and this is what I'm asking for you to do, is to pray for Arizona and pray for any of the areas. We just pray for fraud to be exposed. Pray for light. Pray for those who are operating in fraud, who are doing that, which is fraud vitiates everything. So if they're operating in fraud, then that should vitiate everything they did. And we need that now. We need that light to come in order for there to be serious change in our world. And of course, when they're out in the open, when they're exposed like that, it is because they're desperate. So this is, of course, the most dangerous time. The most dangerous person, if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody that didn't really want you but doesn't want to let you go, that's the most dangerous relationship you can be in. The person doesn't love you but doesn't want to let you go. Very dangerous. And so that's where we are. We have our world is in that situation. Our whole world, our whole earth is in that situation. Doesn't love us, but don't want to let us go. And so you want to talk about abuse. And now that is commonly being attacked, and the light is shining and the trumpets have blown, you saints have done an amazing job. I'm going to wrap this up here in a minute, and then I'll tell you why I believe that you need to continue to be on the front lines. It's not about journalists. It's not about information. Information by itself won't do us a lot of good. Just to be informed, we need to do something with that. We need to know what to do and how to conduct ourselves. And we move mountains when we pray. And so that is why we need to do these broadcasts, so that we know what we're praying for, what specifically we're looking at, and why it's an issue. Did you know you were in a biological war? Some of you figured that out. Okay, so switching to health issues, I found this very fascinating. This was a study done by Israel, just released. Sperm counts worldwide have plunged 62%. How many believe that was coincidental? And under 50 years. So in 50 years, that's what we've seen. That was intentional, folks. That's the result of all the chemicals, all of the various ways in which our adversary is attacking our physical bodies, and sperm counts and reproduction is a big issue to those that believe that there are too many people. And so this is a serious issue, and I just thought that was very interesting. Again, link will be in the description. And we also had some additional news that was health related, and some of this is really hard to even talk about, but unfortunately we have to. And this is the world we are in, and this is one of the things we need to intercede for. I don't think I have to tell you guys why this is, why 1,000 athletes, according to this report. Thank you, Octavia. Octavia is my one-woman news crew. She supplied me quite a few stories, some of which I did use this week. 1,000 athletes, and this is one of them, collapsing, dying, heart problems, blood clots, all between March. This is just the athletes. 2021 and June 2022. This is a horrific thing, and this was a compilation of all of them. I mean, just so sad. It's heartbreaking, saints. And there are many slain of Yahuwah. So, he meant it when he said that. And this has just begun, and we're going to see many, many more deaths and many more people with heart problems. And I'm sure it's just coincidental. I'm sure there's nothing interesting that happened between this time period. I'm sure we can't figure out why. So, wake up your neighbors, wake up your friends, encourage them to do some homework, because if they're still buying the lie and letting their children participate in those things, there's some serious effects. And it really, really will sober you up. And I've saved two very difficult stories for last here. Actually, the most difficult stories. And this is where I'm going to end tonight. And then we're going to talk about some things here that we need to know. You're going to see an increase in demonic activity. It is just part of this process. I don't know how else to say that. And so as the scripture is fulfilled, as you're seeing more and more events begin to, the move of the Ruach is starting to wake people up. And as a result, you're going to see more demonic activity. There's no short way to say that, or no nice way to say that. People are going to die in really bad ways. Here we have a story that is, I think, indicative of some of what you're going to see. This was absolutely random. And this poor family, mother, and there actually was a report about this particular house before this event. But unfortunately, someone entered and killed a mother and her 3 children. Now, in this case, it was an assailant. In this next story, which is utter tragedy, it was committed by the very family members themselves. And so this is probably the saddest story that I'm going to cover for you today. And this brings us back here to Arizona. So again, we definitely need your prayers for this area. And it is a complete tragedy, according to this news report from the Independent. Lawyer's husband kills her and 3 children in chilling murder-suicide, and no one knows why. That's the story. No one knows why. And they were found, a beautiful family, a very, very tragic story. And they were found by the babysitter. And so the babysitter, probably worked for them regularly, came by and found their bodies. And so this was a murder-suicide. Thank you for sharing that with us. Octavia, thank you so much for sharing that story with me. It's very heartbreaking. That's hard on me. That's one of those, I have a rule, nobody gets hurt. So this is like the opposite extreme of the nobody gets hurt. But this is very serious. What does this tell us? This tells us that we have some desperate spirits out there. And it also should warn you all just how violent they actually are. We underestimate these spiritual forces many, many times. The reason why they don't know why is because they're carnal and they're only looking in the natural. They don't understand the spiritual dynamics that are occurring and the pressures that are now being applied into people's lives that weren't there before. And so this is a very critical time for us to pray and intercede for friends and relatives, because this family gave off no indication that they were under high levels of stress. And obviously marital discord, there's some potential that it was as a result of some marital discord, but there's divorces all the time. People get divorced all the time without killing each other. So what took this to the next level? And I believe that you're going to see more and more demonic manifestation, blood sacrificing, horrific scenes. There were other stories that were shared. I didn't decide to discuss killings in nightclubs, killings in shootings, mass shootings, and so forth that are going on several places. One was an LGBTQ nightclub. Another was a shooting at a college in Virginia. So we're seeing these activities, but do we understand what's really happening? And that's why I really want to encourage you all to be praying for your neighborhoods, for your communities, and praying for these things to be exposed, praying for these spirits to be isolated. So, if you have a spider in your house and you don't want to kill it, right? You put a glass over it, you isolate it, and then you can get it out. Well, it's kind of the same thing. You're going to get these spirits isolated, and then you're going to get rid of them from your communities by intercession. And if you don't think that matters, you're wrong. Get your shofar and pray and call for his blessing in the place that you are. You may be saving lives, saints. Think about this family. This is why I covet your prayers, and we need to pray one for another, because any family can suddenly have marital problems, or any family can suddenly have strife, right? Fights happen unexpectedly. That's the nature of fighting. But we have to be people that are wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And we also have to realize that we have a heightened environment of conflict. Our adversary is trying desperately, if you haven't noticed, to start conflict worldwide. He wants there to be conflict everywhere. So they're out for blood in every sector. And you're going to see short temperedness. You're going to see a lot of frustration. A lot of that comes from the economy. A lot of it comes from the physical things that changed them. So they are no longer the same person anymore, and they are operating accordingly. So you've got a lot of factors now that are going to start to interact in society. And at some point, there's going to be massive separations, and you're going to see it manifesting here very soon. Lastly, I'd like to point out that the former president, Mr. Trump, announced that he was running for re-election. Did he ever mention a year? There's some rumors that there may be some real changes occurring here in a real short amount of time. So, given that Supreme Court case, if that goes forward, if that went under the radar intentionally and then goes forward, if the military gets behind that, for example, if there's some additional evidences that are brought in, if other forces join in, we could see massive change right here at home. So that's why I encourage you to keep your eyes open, continue to pray one for another, move with wisdom regarding your assets, regarding your living situation, regarding your future. You have to move with wisdom. You have to really pray now and ask Yahuwah to tell you where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to participate in. And we are very focused here. So again, we don't pay any attention to what's going on in 50 other places with regard to that. We're focused here. I believe that we're going to need every ounce of land that we have, and then some. I believe we're going to need a lot more land than we have right now. But I can only do what I can do one step at a time. And I think that's true of all captains and all leaders anywhere, anybody that is making preparations for difficult days. This is the time to do it while they're still working out these machinations, while they're still running around trying to run the world. Okay. This is a good time for you and I to make our own preparations and plans and secure our families. Amen. And so I just want to encourage you in that regard. I want to thank you for joining us for this discussion. I don't want to go on too much longer because I want to make sure that it is shareable for you with your friends and your family. And I pray that whoever watches this awakens, starts to ask new questions, and begins to seek first the kingdom of our Elohim and his righteousness. He is calling his elect in this hour. I pray that's you. Thank you so much for joining us. May he bless each and every one of you. Amen.